right, what's happening, everybody? Hope everybody's having a fantastic Saturday. Been getting a few requests to chat about the new Z06. Quite a few folks are heading out to Velocito this evening, by the way. So if you hear some rumbling going on outside, that's exactly what's going on there. So anyway, been getting a few requests to talk about the C8 Z06. We're going to be mainly talking about that thing tonight. As a two-time recovering Corvette owner myself, I've got a little bit to think about and a little bit to say about that car, because part of me is really excited about it and part of me feels like it is a slowly developing, roided up douchebag middle finger to everybody that has ever aspired to own a Corvette. I'll explain what I mean by that here pretty soon. Hold that thought. I'll be right back. Let me slide back over here. Make sure we are locked in, which I believe that we are. So, getting to it. So is in first, saying hi for that Z06, especially for being naturally aspirated. So I want you to think about this for a minute, though. What is that thing? 5.5 liters? 5.5 liters, 80 whatever D500 RPM, making 670 horsepower. Not too shabby. But here's the problem. 670 horsepower in a car that, well, number one, can you afford it? The biggest issue with the Corvette for me is that it's priced itself and it's put itself into the stratosphere in terms of affordability and really what the mission statement is for the Corvette just in general. Ever since I was a kid, and I mean a kid, little bitty guy, little bald Brian, ever since I was a kid, you always heard rumors about a mid-engine Corvette that Zora Artis Duntov wanted to put out into the world. But for whatever reason, it just never came to be. And, well, here we are, decades after that. We just now are getting our mid-engine Corvette. Now, before we can talk about the Z06 really in depth, we need to set the stage. And that stage is, well, history had shown that the guy that invented the Corvette wanted a mid-engine Corvette. We didn't get one for about, 50-something years. And now we've got one. Here's the problem with the Corvette. Just before we even start talking about the Z06, it is being, and this is, I don't know how another polite way to say this, it is being, well, very coddedly panned by practically every journo that has gotten behind the wheel of that thing. Regardless of what it does around a Nuremberg ring, most of the journalists that have come away from driving that car have said that unless it is in competition suspension setup, in other words, 3 degrees negative camber front and rear, unless it's in that guise, the handling is really nothing to write home about. It's really not all that fast either, especially when you line it up against your general, well, Scat Pack, of which it's basically running in lockstep with so far as I've seen at the drag strip, because we have had quite a few roll through there. And, you know, Scat Pack on a set of drag radials up against a Corvette with all the gadgets and gizmos that it's got to get off the line, an okay air, and actually really decent air, you'll see 12.0s, 11.9s, maybe an 11.8 out of that Vet. That is, on average, an $82,000 car versus your kind of the run-of-the-mill $40,000 car. And I know you're about to say, Corvette's not a drag race car. Listen, in this day and age, everything is a drag race car. And by the way, the owner of the Vet that just went into the 8s on a drag strip, the first Vet in the 8s, that was a C8 Corvette is what we're talking about, the first C8 Corvette in the 8s. But it's not a drag race car. Okay. So you kind of see what I'm going with. But if it's not a drag race car, well, what is it? The regular Corvette doesn't make enough horsepower for the stability of a mid-engine car to be a top-end racer or to be a long-distance, high-speed run car. It doesn't really work like that. Not when you only have just this side of 500 horsepower. Yeah, kind of like the 392, except without the torque. And the 390 is the same speed as a car that's how much lighter? Anyway, you can kind of see where I'm going with this. Journalists don't really like it all that much because it doesn't handle all that great unless you put it into a setting that would be absolutely catastrophic to the life cycle or the longevity of a set of tires. That's what I'm trying to go with that. And even then, it was ho-hum, basically being likened to the worst experience you could have with a 911, which is to say it handles about as well as a Gen 2 Viper GTS. That's not a compliment, by the way. That's my takeaway from it. And you're talking to somebody who's got miles upon miles, stacks upon stacks of laps with Gen 2 Vipers. So that's the basis for which this car is being sent off into the world. And so because it's already starting off from a position of, I mean, is this car just more, but on steroids? Because here's the way it seems to shape up. 5.5 liter, flat plane, high revving, sounds really good engine in the exact same chassis that's kind of, that a lot of people have kind of panned a little bit. It's not a drag race car. Okay. Even though the fastest cars that are out there, the McLarens, the Ferraris, the NSX and everything else, I know the NSX is a hybrid, but you know, all of those cars, you see them at drag strips all the time, putting in pretty decent work, but they're not drag race cars, right? Only the Corvette gets to wear that scarlet letter, I guess you could say, of not drag race car. This is kind of the scarlet letter in reverse. Like everybody else is getting away with the fun stuff except for the Vette. So the Vette isn't a drag car, even though all of its contemporaries are drag cars. And yes, I'll say contemporaries because if it waddles and quacks, what do you call it? The Vette looks like a McLaren. It looks like one of the mid-engine Ferraris or Lamborghinis or any of those other cars. They all look the same. If you were an alien, you got plopped down onto the planet Earth and were shown those cars, you wouldn't know that they weren't related. So then to that point, the Z06 drops. Now you're talking about a car that is going to cost somewhere north of probably $140,000 as an average selling price. Again, the soundtrack is amazing. The car sounds unbelievably good. We're talking LFA quality sound here, which is to say it's on par with some of the best sounding cars ever made. But that is about the only party trick that it's going to have. It doesn't look far and away different enough from the regular Corvette to really set it apart. And because of that, and because of the price, is the thing even really going to sell? One of the issues that I have with the car is that because of the cost, it pushes former Corvette Z06 owners completely away from the car. There is no way I would shell out that kind of bread for a car that I realistically can't do anything interesting with. As stated before, 670 horsepower in a car that weighs 3,500 pounds is a 10-second car. Yay, I guess. I mean, chalk it up to yet another 10-second car once you put it on a tire. You're not really going to be tracking this thing. It's, although a really good handling car, it's not sharp. It's not going to have the turn in that other cars have. It's not going to have the turn in that a GT3 would have. It's not going to have the turn in that a normal pedestrian Porsche Turbo is going to have. So what's the use there? Now it's just another really good sounding, naturally aspirated car going around a local closed circuit. But you've really got to want to be into closed circuit racing because, again, it's in the same chassis as the same Corvette that journos were going about, unless it was set up with the -3 degrees of camber, which is going to destroy a set of tires. But listen, if you've got the kind of scratch necessary to bring home one of those Corvettes, and I don't mean on some 90-month freaking term deal, if you've got the kind of money that it takes to bring home one of those Corvettes, you probably have the kind of money that it's going to take to keep tires on the thing if you're on a closed circuit, which, by the way, I would highly, 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 highly recommend for any new Corvette owner. Because with a mid-engine car, and by the way, Vipers were also rearward weight bias. Try saying that 3 times fast. Dang it. This front that blew through, by the way, has got everybody's allergies on freaking hard right now. So if I'm over here doing that stuff, it's because I got tree pollen, mold, and God only knows what else flying around in my face. So you're gonna tell me that, again, Gen 2 Viper is what I have the most experience with as far as fast cars on closed circuit tracks. They have a nasty habit of understeering also. You have to practice, and you have to de-learn and relearn how to drive with one of those cars. Not saying you can't do it, but again, get ready because you're going to be scratching out quite a bit of money for tires with this thing once you have the thing set up to get around a track. So let me understand this correctly. $140,000 for a car that will get literally walked all over by any kid with a Mustang and a blower on the thing on the street, especially from a roll. It's not going to be as friendly or as fun to drive around a track as hardly any of its contemporaries, not the least of which are already quite well established as far as getting around a track. Porsche, I'm primarily talking about here. It doesn't have the panache of a Lamborghini or a McLaren or anything like that. So what does it leave us with? I mean, it's actually kind of a sad state of affairs for the Z06 because realistically, it's going to be a great car, but it's the car for somebody that could not afford a McLaren, for the guy that was too cheap to pony up for the Lamborghini, for the guy that didn't want the stigma of a Ferrari but wanted something like it. Well, you got the Vette, and if, I mean, you're really slumming it and you can only afford a $140,000 car, well, you can always go pick up one of them Corvettes down at your dealership that you would normally buy your fleet truck from. I mean, I don't know if they serve caviar up in there, but I mean, you probably get some fish sticks and some, cheese whiz to go with it. I don't know. It just feels like, Chevrolet is trying to tart up the Corvette a little bit too much. What's funny is, so I've got this calendar. It sits on the wall over here, and it's actually a ZR1 of the C7 ZR1s on this calendar. Funny thing is that I see ZR1s all over the place down here. I really do think that about half of the production run of ZR1s are based somewhere in Houston, Texas. That's the car that I think of when I think of Corvette. I don't think of this mid-engine thing. And by the way, it's not because it's the new Vette. I'm thinking of the old ZR1 primarily because front engine, rear drive, all-American muscle car. And at the time of the C7, you could still get a Grand Sport. You could still get something that looked good. It looked the part. It looked like a proper sports car in the American tradition of it. And you could afford it. The Corvette checked in with a base price around $55,000. If you stretched it out, you could get a Grand Sport for what, 64, 65 grand? Not cheap, but still doable if you absolutely had to have that car. The C8 isn't that. The C8 is so far not that it has put itself into an odd stratosphere for a lot of people. It puts it into a position where, because the average selling price for 2020 for a Corvette was $82,000, that is absurd money for a car that doesn't handle all that great. It doesn't go that fast. And now you're going to ask me to do well with a car that is only making more power, to the tune of about, what, 175 more horsepower? It's going to make more horsepower in the same chassis, and it's really not going to do anything all that interesting. And again, you can say that it's not a drag car. What's the first stat you're going to look at? What's the first stat you're going to look at? I'll wait. 0 to 60 is the first thing you're going to look at. What does it do 0 to 60 in? Guys, I got news for you. 0 to 60 is a drag race. But it's not a drag race car. But yet you're going to be looking right at 0 to 60. What does it run 0 to 60 in? You're not even going to think about lateral Gs. And by the way, that is a steady state lateral G, not a turn in or a setup lateral G. Completely different. How does it deal with switchback? How does it deal with transitions? How does it deal with entering and hitting apexes and turns? What kind of angles are we at? Are we rolling off throttle because we're trying to dive the thing 2 feet inside of an apex only to just barely hit the apex? You Viper owners will know exactly what I'm talking about with that. So those are my thoughts on the car in a nutshell. It's not a situation where I dislike the car. It's great to look at from a bargain standpoint. I still feel like it's got somebody's chopped up Camaro rear end with a C7 Z06 front end grafted to the front of somebody's McLaren or whatever that got sandwich smashed in a three-way collision. It's like a budget car that cost a bunch of money. And you can say, by the way, well, by comparison, look at what a Lambo costs. Look at what pick something that sounds expensive. Ferrari, McLaren, whatever. Look at what these things cost. Well, yeah, look at what they cost. And by the way, I will no sooner have a Corvette sitting right behind me over here than I will a McLaren or a Ferrari or anything else, because it's so stratospherically priced now. So it doesn't matter that it's less expensive. It's less expensive, but then still hella expensive just in general. Oh yeah. And let's not forget one thing. It basically will be about the price of a Tesla Plaid. Oh, shoot. Yes, I did bring up the Tesla Plaid because it's going to be basically the same price as that thing. And when you put a $140,000 Corvette up against $130,000 or $140,000 Tesla Plaid, what you think's about to happen? I mean, it isn't like Tesla Plaids aren't out trolling folks anyway. This is going to be even worse. Chevrolets, take on the world Corvette, doesn't even own its own price point. The whole point of the Corvette was to own a price point, was to own a market segment. So, see, the idea, what you have to understand, especially with the Z06, back in the day, the C5 Z06, I think, was coming in at 55 grand or something like that, maybe 60 grand. And you had that, the Vipers were checking in at about 70, give or take. Anything the Viper could do, the Vette could do better in terms of handling, and the Vette would hang with the Viper through first, second, and third gear in a drag race. After that, it was all over for the Vette in a quick way, but it doesn't matter. The Vette owned the price point. The Vette won't own the price point anymore. In fact, the Vette will not only not own the price point, it won't even be in the same league as the other competition around it. So there's that. By the way, anybody seem to start forgetting yet about the I don't know, the ZL1. ZL1's still out there. Hasn't died yet, at least not to my knowledge. That thing was putting a hurting on a lot of different cars going around tracks just in general. I wonder how quick it's going to be compared to a ZL1. Or better yet, anybody forgot about the GT500 just yet? The Super Sting? You know, that thing was supposed to be the end of every discussion when it came to pony car, or at least American muscle car performance. And it might still be. And it's so similar to the Corvette in terms of transmission, and although, you know, obviously nowhere near the same as far as engine or anything else, but you still get a dual clutch transmission. Still, basically, it's an American sports car, and it's touted to also not be a drag race car either, even though it's got drag mode or whatever. Still feels pretty good that I stung the living hell out of one at the drag strip, but that's just me reminiscing here. So anyway, let me catch up with you guys real quick. Ben saying, what up, B? Got the arm flexes. CJ saying the new Z06 Corvette almost sounds like a Ferrari. Sounds better than a Ferrari, actually. Slash is saying, hello. CJ, it's going good, man. So saying, still want a C7 Stingray, though. I like the C8, but I don't know about working on mid-engine. Never owned one. I don't think you're going to miss it. CJ saying 670 horsepower is impressive. Yep. So saying it reminds me of the McLaren 670s. CJ, I don't know. I'm not even going to talk about SUVs, dude. X is saying C8 Z06 and Tesla Plaid just destroyed the supercar market. It's not, no, I would disagree with that completely, because like I was saying earlier, if you can't afford a McLaren and you can't afford a Ferrari or a Lambo or something like that, I mean, the Vette's what you have to fall back on. Let me just bring you into stripper logic, okay? The Vette's a nice car by itself. If the Vette's the only car of its kind in the parking lot, it's a little bit of a novelty, but it ain't the Ferrari. It ain't the McLaren, and it ain't the Lambo. So yeah, it's still really, really expensive, but you know it isn't that expensive. You know that car, you got it because you couldn't afford the real thing. That's what the Vette is. So, and that's just how it's going to be looked upon. Gary saying, what up, B? Got the arm flex. Boost is saying, hey, Mason. Sean saying, what up, B? What up, man? Anthony saying, what's up, B? What's up, Anthony? Sean said he's looking into tuning his 2019 Scat. Go with HP tuners on that. That's what I use. I don't use Diablo. It depends on which one you learn. And if you learn Diablo, then Diablo is great. It's not going to do anything different than HP. Again, it's just the dialect of the language that you learn. I learned HP tuners, and I never really even bothered with Diablo. So, you know, that's one of the things about the Vette that a lot of folks aren't really thinking about, is that they're taking the Vette by itself in a vacuum. And this is what really ends up screwing up perception versus reality. Because the Corvette by itself, just sitting there, talking about the Z06 primarily, is an impressive car. It's got a lot of wow to it, especially if it's in the right color. In fact, with an aftermarket set of rims, the brown color that the Corvette has, whatever that brown, like bronze brown or whatever it is, that color on that car with those lines, I know you're going to think I'm losing my mind over here, but that color is stunning in person. That car with tan leather interior is the only version of that car that I would say looks rich. It looks like it could fit in the right circles. But man, do you have to put on the right clothes for that car to be able to get into those circles. A lot of the other colors that I've seen are really basic, cheap, American looking paint jobs. And I mean that in with the most critical eye. But where you really start to see the differences is in the more of the jewel tones, the blues, the reds, the yellows, things like that. Those are the colors that with the Vette, they just look, that paint job could be just as comfortable on that Vette as it would be on a pickup truck. Whereas the aftermarket, that too, but the other cars like the McLaren, for example, perfect example of this. Every little detail about that car is fussed over. The paint, the depth of the paint, the color quality, the hue, the tone is so good. And that's why for me, the Corvette, it's not just the car, it's not just the price. It's the attention to detail. And because believe me, there's a certain breakover price point where you are going to expect far and more for your dollar that you're spending. In other words, you need even more value for the dollar than what you're getting with the Corvette. And that's the other thing. I don't feel like the Vette at those prices is going to be all that great of a value. You've got to remember that, there's nothing, and I mean nothing sophisticated about a mid-engine car. They've been doing this for a long, long time. So because it's just one of these situations where you find yourself really rooting for the Vette. And I have been finding myself really wanting the Z06 to be really, really good. Regardless of what track versions of the car do or anything like that, I want this car to do really well. The problem with that is that the more that I see the car, the more that I hear other people talking about it, especially when it comes to the price. And I'm going to keep bringing that up and I'm going to keep hammering that home because that price is what is driving this sour grapes attitude from a lot of people. Again, Z06, if you go by the generic math of where the C7 was, base model would be about 55 grand. The Z06, I think, was kicking in at around 80 grand, 75 to 80 grand for a base model Z06 for the C7. So again, 50% more expensive. But the average price for a C7, instead of being 55, is probably 70. Well, that puts you well into a $100,000 plus car for the Z06. The same math is going to work out here for the Z06 versus the regular C8. And the problem that you're going to run into is that, yeah, it's going to be about 140 grand as your average selling price. I wouldn't be surprised if it was more, but I would probably use that number as a pivot number. And I'm just so far out of the buying pool for that car that, yeah, I am going to be a little bit sour grapes about it, especially considering the fact that I'm a former Z06 owner. And I can't continue that legacy. I can't continue that that history of being a Z06 owner unless I go find a 7-speed manual C7. Not a bad place to be. And by the way, easily one of my favorite cars to drive. And for any amount of money, I would say a better car than the C8 Z06. It's just a lot of freaking heavy shoes to fill, and it's got decades of development behind it. Now look, I'm not saying that a mid-engine Corvette is a bad idea. In fact, I'm not even saying that I would never own one. But the reality of the situation is right now, It's an incredibly hard sell. So hard, as a matter of fact, that I don't know of a lot of people with the means to be able to buy one that are even talking about it. I mean, they think, the conversations that I've had anyway, it's a neat car, bit of a novelty, sounds amazing, but at that price, I don't know. And unless you are just buying it because you are a dyed-in-the-wool Corvette fan, what are you really buying it for? Here's the other thing you got to remember too. A lot of the people that would have been buyers for the C8, the younger buyers that are being pushed out by the price anyway, aren't interested in it because, well, they're kind of seeing it through the same lenses that I'm seeing it through. But a lot of them aren't buying a Corvette because they see it as a boomer cruiser. I mean, really, it kind of has fallen into that, I don't know, that swing of thought where it's a Corvette. I mean, cool car and all, but, you know, unless you're doing something with it, can't say that I'm all that impressed by it. It's something that your granddad drives around, goes to get ice cream and, you know, goes 130, 140 miles an hour in every once in a while, brings it home, puts it in the garage. That's, you know, that's what Corvettes were really good for. And, you know, coffin cars is what they're also known as, because a lot of the guys that buy them keep them until they die. So, nothing wrong with that. It's a cool car, but it's still a Corvette. And at that price, damn, I mean, it's making some Mopars look really good. And not even because, and the reason why I say that, I'm going to describe a car to you. And tell me what car I'm describing. Fast in a straight line. Handles okay. Pretty comfortable. Gets fairly decent fuel mileage. Icon. Amazing styling. Universal appeal. What car was I describing there? Could have been a Hellcat. Could have been a Scat Pack. Could have been a Corvette. Because both cars fit that mold. So you have to ask yourself, without the pedigree of this, of any, really anything for the C8 for that matter, I know it's done well enough in SCCA racing, but that's also, it's done well enough in SCCA racing with the lack of a Viper. And does anybody really even care anymore? I mean, I don't know that they do. Where are the McLarens and the Lambos and everything else that would be paired up with it? Are they even out there? The thing is I don't even pay attention to it. The reason why nobody really pays attention to it is because it's not 1, 2, 3. That's the whole thing that everybody's looking at these days. Nobody's really into the motorsport aspect of it. But if they were, C8 would take a lot of work. So anyway, let me catch up with you guys real quick. X is saying, buy a Corvette and it'll depreciate a lot more than a Ferrari. I never bought a car brand new and probably never will, but that's just me. If you can afford the car, you can afford the depreciation. You just have to know what to expect. Some Ferraris do lose a lot of value, some don't. So saying the deep blues look good, but those light blues, yellow, bright green, leave them to exotic cars. The lines just don't really, they don't work with those colors. It's kind of hard to say. And when I tell you that brown makes the car, the brown color on that car, for whatever reason, that color adds value to that car. Like it adds like a sense of class to that car. That the other color is just really, you would have to see it to understand what I'm talking about. Mr. saying, smart money will wait. They will fall in price. Yeah, they are. Sovereign saying Challenger. So saying, sounds like a C6. Nice shirt, Super B Mason. Yep. Thank you very much. So yeah, that's kind of the idea here. So if you had the money, and you had it to spend, what car would you buy? I mean, realistically, we're talking about 100. Let's say you have 140 grand. What car do you buy? I mean, you got the Corvette, but you got the Tesla. Is there anything from Mercedes or BMW that you would look at for that kind of price? Starts to get a little bit convoluted on the German side. What about Audi? Gets you to thinking, doesn't it? For that kind of money, you'd certainly find yourself a demon if you're just a hardcore Mopar enthusiast. Not that great from a roll, but fun if you've got a local drag strip to play with. But aside from that, if you don't, your garden variety Hellcat or Red Eye would be just as good, if not better, because it'd be less expensive. Oh yeah, and here's the other thing. So the weird thing about it is if you look at cars, SUVs, anything in that price range, that 110-ish $1,000 price range to, I would say, about $150,000-$160,000 price range. You ever notice how fast that price range depreciates? My theory on that is this: the people that have the money to get into those cars, number one, will typically lease them because they want the newest, latest, and greatest. The other thing is if they fail for whatever reason outside of warranty, they are astronomically expensive to repair. Mercedes and BMW, Audi falls into this as well, are notorious for hemorrhaging value the second that you finish signing your paperwork on that paper. They said that some cars, drop as much as 10 or 15% the minute you drive them off the lot. Those German cars have got to lose 20. I mean, it is god awful how much those things lose their value. Dad's Garage, thank you very much, man. I appreciate the contribution to the cause. We will be putting that towards a tire fund. So I am looking to move the hell away from those Tri-5 R2s. Give you guys an idea. So it's just driving me nuts the way that they fit on those rims. That Tri-5 R2 does not fit well on a 10.5-inch wide wheel, in my opinion. So back with a set of SS's. Not to mention, they're great tires, but they fall short in terms of being a good drag radial. I'll give you guys an example. If you're just driving the car and you kind of roll into the throttle fairly quickly, not mat the throttle, just roll into the throttle fairly quickly, it'll still light those tires up, and that's at like 50, 55 miles an hour. Really not even wanting to do it. So I'm going to go with something a little bit grippier, something that looks a little bit better too. So those will be they'll be for sale on Facebook Marketplace soon, I'm sure. We'll see what I end up doing with this. But thank you very much. I appreciate that, bud. Saying, please get those thumbs up. Hell yeah. Jerry Race saying, hey man, jumping in, what's going on? Chatting about Corvette stuff. So saying, damn, that price, we can get 3. Hilton Mode TRX. Yeah, so for you guys that don't know, right now the TRX is putting in some work. There's I think the latest record right now for the TRX is a 954 ? Anyway, locally, without nitrous or anything like that, damn near getting into the 9s. And in fact, if the track was open, we would have probably had one in the 9s already. So I say we, not we, but a couple of them that I know. So they're pretty amazing. when you watch one of those things launch, it looks like a boat coming up on plane. I don't know how the front tires stay on the ground with that truck, with a solid rear axle and that off-road suspension being so loose the way that it is. If you haven't seen one launching with 4 drag radials, it's just, they just come up. It's hysterical to watch those things. The theater alone is well worth it. Some are saying, or a pimped out scat pack and pocket the rest. True that. X is saying if I had 140K, I'd get me a 67 427 Corvette. Just make sure you do the chassis modifications of that thing, because those cars are horrible about flex. They didn't really get the flex right with the Vettes until the 69 model year. The 68 was basically riding on the same underpinnings as the 67. 67 Vette, whether it's 390 horse, 435 horse, or what have you, lots of fun to drive. You want to put a Grand Prix steering wheel in it, though. Believe me on this. C3 Grand Prix steering wheel puts everything in perfect harmony. I've come this close to buying 2 different C3s. And I'm not saying I'm never going to own one, but I love those cars. And there's a few things that you have to do to get the chassis right. They do flex a lot, but they're great cruisers and they make an amazingly good sound. Some are saying that's because they're unreliable, just like a Range Rover. Range Rover's another one that dumps value. The thing is that they're really reliable right up until the point where they're not. My E63 was built like a tank, and I really loved that car. But I was scared to death if anything ever did go wrong with it. I had one issue. Actually, I had to replace the fuel pump in that car. No, it was a fuel pump seal, I think, in that car. Anyway, yeah, it was the seal. Anyway, no different than doing our cars. I mean, the LX platform is identical to the W211 and W212 platforms. But anyway, long story short, anything for those cars is ridiculously expensive, and it's not the latest and greatest. Look, it's, again, when you buy a car or lease or take on one of those cars, one of the things you have to remember, let me get this thing plugged in here. One of the things you have to remember is that the people that are buying those cars want the latest. They want the most stylish. You know, they're paying for a sense of occasion. That car after 3 or 4 years is not a sense of occasion. That car after 3 or 4 years is just another used car to these folks. Could be any kind of car. It's just another used car, and they're looking for the next latest and greatest. And nobody wants to take on that car, because if it fails, it is a nightmare in progress. So anyway, yeah, like I said, they are reliable until they're not. And it seems like once they start failing, that it's a get ready, because it's going to be bad. That's why they sell for so cheap on the used markets. So's asking if I still have the 18s for sale. No, I just got through testing 18s though. But no, those 18s, the rims themselves belong to Chris. In fact, I had planned on getting those broken down. Probably break those down on Monday. NASA is saying Dodge just announced direct connection is back. So we can talk about that. That was actually another thing I wanted to chat about. I just wanted to kind of burn through the whole deal with the Vette. So direct connection, the extent of how back it is, will be announced on the 8th. So next Monday is when we're supposed to get some kind of an announcement as far as what direct connection is going to be. If they are going to go with the, well, we're calling Mopar Performance Parts direct connection again now. I'm going to be pretty bummed out about that. I want direct connection back. I want direct connection a la 1987. I want direct connection back, and I want them to be supporting the cars that are already on the ground right now. I want to see them doing something for the 392 guys. They've already, Mopar Performance Parts has already done the Scat Pack thing for the 5.7s. which is great and all, but do something for the 392. Give us something to brag about. Give us a reason to fly the flag again. Give us a reason to wear the shirts. Give us a reason to be proud Mopar owners. The direct connection brand was a big deal back in the day. So if they're bringing it back and it's going to be along those lines, I'm going to be a huge supporter of that. It'd be really cool if they had factory authorized emissions legal upgrades for the entire line, whether it's the trucks, the cars, whatever the case is. That's really what I'm looking for. And I'm hoping that they are going to, move forward with that, as opposed to, well, we're just bringing the name back and you can buy a t-shirt, but about the most you can hope for is a cold air kit. And that's it. That's going to be the extent of, what they being Dodge is going to do to, support this community that they have been, for lack of a better way of putting it, milking in terms of tradition now since 2008. So, it's not for lack of trying, and not for lack of, yelling into this freaking camera here about, we've got to have more support for Mopar. Look what Ford Racing Performance Parts does for Mustangs and what they used to do, especially. I mean, that was not only was FRPP really good, and they still are really good about, having parts and being accessible. But the knowledge that they would put into those catalogs was really good. And by the way, hey, Dodge, direct connection. Here's something for you. Make red-eye parts available just in general. Like, I don't know, hoods or drive shafts or axles or maybe a Demon hood. Use some of that direct connection marketing and waterfall the stuff that matters to racers, not this stupid hood off of the SRT that you're going to put on a 6-cylinder. I'm talking about the functional hot rod parts that are on the Demon, or the snorkel hoods that are on the red eyes that apparently you can't get unless you have a VIN. How about Uconnect updates, where you've got different gauge packages and different programs you can play with, stuff like that. Once again, Dodge, listen to me, call up B Mason. Hey, we need marketing help. Can you do that? Yes, I can. So just all you got to do, if you're in marketing for Stellantis, for the Dodge side, all you got to do is Tuesdays or Saturdays, turn on Mopar Chat Live and just listen, because I'm going to come up with some gems for you. Just chip me off a piece once you get your raises, okay? Anyway, these are the things that make the cars fun. And if you're going to have direct connection, you've got to be able to fly the flag. I'm talking, I want swag, banners, tent stuff. I want to see all of the electronic gadgets and gizmos be able to be waterfalled. I want to be able to buy performance parts right off the shelf that come on the Red Eye or the Demon. It's got to be that good, and it's got to be that involved, because it's because of the racer that Dodge is now in the position that they're in right now. Without the racers that have been out there just schooling folks on drag strips and on the streets, mind you, falling in line in lockstep with some of the marketing that, well, all of the marketing that Dodge puts out there in terms of, video and print ads. I wonder what their tire budget was for some of those videos and print ads, by the way. That was a jab if you didn't notice. Anyway, it's one of those things where if they do it right, and I've been hoping they would bring direct connection back for a long time, been saying it for a number of years now. If they bring it back and if they do it right, it will be amazing. It'll be kind of like old school Mopar all over again, with the 5.7, the 392, and the Hellcat variants all being able to take advantage of it. And the Jeep brand as well. If they just throw the name out there and they kind of limp it out there, it's going to be a bummer to say the least. it will be it'll be a whimper instead of a growl, and that is never a good look, ever. Especially with, well, all the soon-to-be hype over all the EVs that are coming out as well. You need to start supporting somehow. I'm just curious as far as how they're going to support those EVs through direct connection as well. Oh, Sovereign saying the little little bitty brakes for the TRX. I know, right? Sovereign saying that his boss has a couple of those Range Rovers, and when the warranties are out, he runs like hell from it. Oh yeah, no, for sure. X is saying the new direct connection is MMX now. That's actually pretty damn true. It's about right. Either MMX or HHP. That's, yeah, I 100% agree with that. But, you know, we'll see what they end up doing direct connection. I hope that it goes well, and I hope they've got a lot of plans, a lot of cool plans. You know, I am a sucker, and I know a lot of y'all are too, and I know a lot of people just in general are absolutely easily amused by, you know, Uconnect updates, cool, you know, skins that you can put into that thing. You know, just regular old software update. Could be anything that makes the interaction more personalized. You know, just the cool things that you can do with that whole interface. Something like that would be an easy, cheap, by the way, and it'd be a profit generating boom if they would just do something like that. Are you kidding me? I'll be the first in line. Here's my money. Give me the SD card so I can update this thing. Any kind of upgrades would be amazing. Jay, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for the contribution, buddy. Anything that works with the enthusiast, any way that you can work with the enthusiast. Here's what I kind of don't want to see happen, though. If they're going to do that, then I don't mind all the swag coming from the other side, direct connection shirts, hats, stickers, all of that. That's cool and all. But here's the problem. A lot of the people that even know about direct connection are, well, let me put it like this. The people that know about direct connection are the ones that are going to be looking for the performance modifications. They're looking for direct connection to be direct connection. In fact, I still have a direct connection fender protector. The swag and everything else is secondary. But if you don't know what direct connection is, you're forgiven for not knowing what it is. It hasn't been out for a while, and if you're new to Mopar, direct connection doesn't really sound like anything. I mean, it sounds like something you deal with an EV or something like that. I don't know, direct connection, you plug it in the wall. I get it, 100%. What I am hoping is that there's some substance to go along with the style that they're going to be selling us. And I'm concerned that there won't be. Mopar Performance Parts hasn't really taken on the 392. Perfect example of this. Mopar Performance Parts never on the 392, and that to me was the biggest failure for Mopar Performance Parts. They had scat packages for the 5.7 and nothing of substance for the trucks, nothing of substance for the 392s, certainly nothing for the Hellcat. And aside from hats, t-shirts, stickers, that was it. And you got to have more than that. You got to have substance, you've got to have style, and you've got to be all in when it comes to this. And when I say this, the this that I'm talking about is the lifestyle of owning these types of cars. Because let's face it, these are not necessities, okay? There are other means of practical conveyance available. So if I'm going to be going the extra step to get something like a Hellcat or an RT, some good sounding car like the RT, fast car like the 392, I want that manufacturer to stand behind it and say, hey, listen, you want a little bit more pepper on that steak? We got you. You want a little bit more spicy in that meatball? Baby, we got you for that too. That's what I need to see out of Dodge, because if you're going to be marketing rock and roll music, tire smoke, and talking about brotherhoods and doing all the stunt show commercials that you see, I want to know that that manufacturer is going to have parts available for me. Suspension bits, the whole bit. I mean, from the back to the front, from the ground up. After, wheel options, things like that. The cool stuff. That's what I'm looking for. And that's what I'm looking forward to. But, man, ain't gonna necessarily hold my breath when it comes to it, because I can promise you that what my idea for direct connection and what their idea for what direct connection should be might be a little bit separated. I just don't know the gulf that is separating those two ideas. Now, getting back to the Vette, again, don't take anything I've said the wrong way. I am excited that Corvette exists in general. And I'm excited that the Corvette will endure in some way, shape, or form. But in my humble opinion, y'all are going to hate what I'm about to say, but this would have been the opportunity of opportunities for Corvette to, instead of dropping 670 adorable and howls like a banshee horsepowers into the Vette, they could have just as easily, probably even more so, gone full electric with the Z06 and hit us with an all-wheel drive 1,200 horsepower monster with torque vectoring and everything else under the sun that would have completely eliminated all of the demons that are coming with the chassis and the suspension geometry. Be shocked at what you can get away with when you can control each wheel individually. You'd have a car that would run deep into the nines in the quarter mile, which everybody wants to see, and it would look like a freaking Z06. That's what Dodge is going to do. So anyway, X is saying the worst part, those stage packages didn't offer that much horsepower per dollar, and it did come with warranty at least. That is true. But the thing about it is they were pricey. But you're paying for the warranty and you're paying for the package badge. And, for a lot of Mopar guys, that means something. But here's the twist. They didn't do it for the 392. See, let me explain to you how stupid that sounds to somebody like me. Okay, so that would be like HHP or MMX only selling parts for the 5.7 and nothing for the Hellcat and nothing for the 392. To this day, like the only car that you could modify would be the 5.7. The 5.7. Did you ever notice throughout that entire conversation that at no point did they offer an ECU swap that would allow for the use of the 6.4 manifold at least? It's in the same car. It just goes, bolts right up. There's no difference realistically with head spacing. It's the same. The block is basically the same bore. And you get what I'm talking about dimensionally. 6.4 intake bolts right up to it. Why wasn't that even thought about? It's little things like that that just blow my mind. So I remember this pretty vividly. I was like, oh damn, they got scat packages? No kidding. Well, yeah, provided that you have a 5.7. And that 5.7 has to be in a car, not in a truck. And if you have a 392 or a Hellcat, they got nothing for you. Okay, so from a business model, you've got incredibly expensive packages that make the 5.7 not quite as fast as a 392 for more than 392 money. You've got nothing for the 392, and you've got zero for your top shelf hot rod. Like, that would be like going back in time and saying, man, listen, I want a set of headers for my 426 Hemi Roadrunner. And them going, no, we don't sell those. But we've got some stuff for your 340 powered Challenger. That's going to really wowzer you up. And it's like, yeah, okay, well, the 340 is pretty badass too, but I spent the extra money on this Hemi. I want to, fly the flag a little bit higher. I want some headers. Let's, talk about, tuning, carburetor jetting tips and tricks. What are we talking about with intake manifolds? What do y'all got for that? Yeah, don't worry about that so much. Listen, look at everything that we've got for a 340. I don't own a 340. I spent hella jack on the other hot rods that you have in your showroom. You can see where that can get a little bit frustrating for your a little bit more enthusiastic enthusiast. Oh, Dad's is asking, anybody know why the carbon black wheels are a $1,300 option over the Devil's rims on the Charger wide body scat? Couldn't tell you, because people will pay it. That's probably why. I never really understood the wheels costing either. Mopar, proud as hell of those rims. You ever tried buying a rim from your Dodge dealership? Get ready to be freaked out. They are prohibitively expensive in some cases. But yeah, getting back to it though, getting back to the direct connection thing. Look, we'll see. I don't really want to get my hopes up, but when you hear that direct connection's coming back, man, you can't help but get a little bit nostalgic. And we'll see how it ends up working out. Oh, Dad's is saying no one seems to know. Some have said lighter, but not for sure. Lighter. I don't know that they would be. I haven't really done any research in them, to be honest with you. But, it's like, how much were the brass monkey wheels? I mean, all that was just a different powder coat color, and they wanted, what was it, like $700 for an upgraded wheel color or something like that? It's been a while since I even looked into that, but I was actually thinking about getting brass monkeys until I saw the price. I just about freaked out. And PTSD, I've already forgotten about how much they cost. But, it's just like anything else, though. Right now, Dodge has done a really good job of waterfalling all the stuff that people used to spend extra money on for their, lower tier cars. We'll see how that ends up working out with direct connection. Like I say, I'm hoping that it'll be a cool way to get hopped up hot rod parts for your cars through that waterfall process. We'll see if it ends up working out that way. Dad's garage saying, to your point, Devil's Rim is like $1,100 each. Yeah, that's, I don't know why. I remember that the SRT wheels, which are Hellcat wheels, but they have the kind of a dark chrome tint to them. Those things were super expensive too. And I was like, it's a freaking rim, man. They can't be that expensive. I just wanted an extra set so I could put drag radials on them, and it didn't end up working out that way for me. That's what kind of started my trip down the drag pack avenue. Oh, Sovereign's asking what I think about that article about the holy guacamole concept. So I saw a little bit of that. I looked into it a little bit, but I didn't get a chance to read all of it. You know, it's cool looking. I love the color. About the only thing that I didn't like about it was the setup, because they were using the Mopar cold air kit, and that thing is not very good. They'd be better off with the shaker to just run with the Hellcat airbox down there, which is actually the absolute best setup for a 392, is to go with the Hellcat airbox on the intake side and run with the shaker. And basically you're just kind of feeding that intake area full of cold air. The shaker runs really good. Anyway, cool. I like the rims. Let's see what they end up doing with it. Like the article says, there's nothing talking about more power out of it, which is it's kind of a weird article, because when you're reading the article, it's like, well, I mean, it should do some the upgrades are talking about cold air, I think, at one point. And they're like, well, it should add a little bit. It's like, it doesn't. And on top of that, I don't want to add a little bit. I want to add a lot. I want to see what they can do with that 392 or more displacement. Who knows what they end up doing with it, but I would like to see them do something. Because right now it's just all aesthetic modifications, and that's really more the issue right now with Dodge, is that it's all just variants and changes of the same theme. Where have we heard that before? Variants of the same theme: brotherhood, tire smoke, bad boy, image marketing, propaganda. Harley Davidson comes to mind, doesn't it? Harley Davidson is an apparel company that happens to sell motorcycles, and I'm afraid that Direct Connection is going to end up taking Dodge a little bit further in that same business model. So, you know, it's a lifestyle. It's a pretty cool thing in general, but I don't want to see any more aesthetic takes on the car. I mean, I love the wheels. They look amazing. Let's try to bring that into Direct Connection. You know, something cool for the narrow body, something cool for the wide body. I love the idea of, you know, being able to get different color lids for the shakers. And I love the idea of being able to do just different cool things in general. Again, keep me involved with the car. Keep me coming back. Because look, these cars nowadays are incredibly expensive, and it makes it... Is that one of the import guys? Sorry, squirrel. It makes it, instead of buying something new because you can't afford to, because of the cost of the thing, keep me coming back to the dealership to buy cool stuff for the car that I bought there. Or let me buy something there and then personalize the living crap out of it through Direct Connection. Let me have the different color lid for my shaker. Let me have the different wheels that I want to buy aftermarket wise. Sell that through Direct Connection. Want it to sound a little bit better. Let me have a cool sounding, axle back, or a cool sounding cat back. Whatever the case is. You want it to run better. Give me some cool, whatever friendly, emissions friendly hot rod parts for the car, cold airs or whatever that actually work. But you get the idea. I was actually kind of hoping that it would say with, a prototype 426 or a prototype, whatever. Not that the 426 would realistically be much better than the 392 in the state of tune that these cars are in. It really wouldn't. I mean, you'd be looking at, let's see, I don't know, somewhere around 520, 540 horse, but it would still be more and it would still be cool, right? we've been working on this for forever. Got it, got it approved, or EPA says thumb up on 426. Anyway, it would just be cool if they had something like that going in general, because, like I say, I love that kind of stuff, and I am a sucker for it. Dad's Garage saying maybe their black carbon are $1,300 because they have an SRT center cap instead of the slashes. Probably. Say, love those Magnum 500 like rims. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. They look really good. You know what? That's something else that really drives me nuts about these cars. They've been out since how long? I would love for somebody to show me a set of wheels. I am so picky when it comes to wheels and tires and how the tire sits on the wheel and all of that. It's from knowing what works and what's proper, just the proper aesthetic for how that comes together. It's so hard to get that. But I would love for a set of wheels that, like the rally style wheels. I know somebody makes a set. I just haven't ever seen them on a car. I've never seen them really look good on a car unless they were really one-off customs. But nobody really makes a good looking wheel that fits these cars the right way. And it just drives me nuts. And part of that has to do with the fact that it can't be a 20. These cars have got to have some sidewall. It's got to be meaty. It's got to look the part of the muscle car. And nobody makes a set of 18s that would fit with a set of Hellcat or SRT brakes that you just go, that looks good. That's what I'm looking for. Anyway, I digress. Oh, Ken saying a novel idea is that they can sell tunes as direct connections. Hey, I mean, that's what I'm getting at. It's kind of what they did with the 5.7 is you could get, calibration changes and all of that. And I mean, they're not doing anything like that with the 392. X-Dash is saying C5 or C6? C6. Don't mess with the C5. Getting one soon. C5 priced around 12 to 18. C6 is 18 to 24. Is the LS2 worth the extra money? Like you would not believe, bro. Yes. It's a better car from an ergonomic standpoint. Just take my word for it. So yeah, you get more displacement. You get a little bit lighter car. You get significantly better seating position. There is no downside to the C6, only upside, and you will wish like hell that you would have spent the money on the C6 when you buy a C5. C5s are great if you want to hack them up and turn them into race-only cars. But from a realistic standpoint, like you're like on the street, on the road, drag strip, road course, autocross, all of that, C6 wins that argument every single time, twice on Sunday, bro. Don't even feel bad about it. So say that Ford Star has some nice sets in 18s. I will look that up. In fact, I'm going to make a note of that right now. That Ford Star has got them, and I will look them up. Rims for chandelier. Because I am soon to be in the market for a set of wheels for that car. I love my Demon replicas, but the only thing that's going to keep me happy with a set of Demon reps is a set of SS's on the back. And quite honestly, 10.5 is kind of a funky width for those cars, and especially with 20s, because you can have a 305 on a 10-inch wheel, and it won't have that bulging out look to it. Well, you can have it on an 18-inch and won't do it. On a 20-inch, the sidewall is so short that it's got to out really quick to get to that width, and it does not look good. I've got 305s on my forge lines, and they look great. But that's also because they're D5s and they're drag race setup, so there's that. But anyway, I will look into that. Thank you very much. Iron's asking, what is the smallest wheel we can get for a Challenger? I'd rather have a small wheel and a thick sidewall. Same here. So the smallest you can get on a RT or on a Scat Pack, I believe is a 17, but I don't think a 17 will look right proportionally. I think 18 is actually the best size for that car. Actually, 18 or 19 would be ideal. But I think 17 is going to be a little bit tight for the fronts. If you've got, well, no, you can't put it on the fronts if you've got a Hellcat. It might be tight for the fronts for the Scat Pack variants and the RTs. But 18s will definitely fit, and that would be the direction I would go for you because tires are easy to hold of. It balances the car out and it looks right. There's nothing worse than the aesthetic clash when you've got a car that has extremely strong styling and then you try to couple that with wheels that are trying to grab attention for themselves. The trick is to put something together that is in harmony with itself in terms of visual appeal. And the 20s, at least the Demon replicas, have a lip which tricks the eye into thinking that that Demon wheel is actually a smaller diameter than it is. And that's really the big benefit to the Demon replica wheels. And really, if I'm being honest, I just need to get a different tire on there so that, because it's something that my eye is just absolutely immediately drawn to. But that's one of the things that drove me nuts about the stock slingshots. It's like, don't try to put a rim on here that's super flashy when you've got a 60s classic body line that you're trying to work with. 60s classic body line dictates minimalist, not extravagance. So anyway. Oh, so saying that's how he feels about the Nittos. They're a little bit bigger than he liked. Yeah, the weird thing about it is they don't, if you look at the specifications, you would be right to think that they fall right in line with like what other tires their size out to. But in practice, at least so far as I can tell with mine, they just run a little bit too wide, and they run wide in the worst possible way because they are a 35 series tire. You can run wide if your aspect ratio is like 45. Actually, 45 or 50, you can definitely get away with it. But you cannot get away with it when your aspect ratio is so short. So that's why the old school Nitto Tri-5s were such awesome tires. They would sit on a set of 10-inch wide wheels straight up and down, and they were perfect. It's kind of how the SSs are. So, you know, if they still made the old Tri-5 the way that, you know, we all remember them, you know, that's what everybody would run still. But I don't know why they did away with that. It's such a bummer. Golly. But what really sucks too is the Tri-5 R2, the best tire on the market in the wet, a really, really good tire for like a high performance daily setup. But I am just not a big fan. In fact, this is how annoyed I am with Nitto with this. I used to run Nitto on literally everything in the fleet. And when they did away with the Tri-5R, I quit buying Nitto 100%. So they took away my favorite tire. I mean, why even bother with? I had Tri-5s literally on everything. Not anymore. But with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. We're coming up on an hour and 20 minutes. My allergies are jacking with me something serious. I'm going to be sniffling and coughing my way through the rest of this, so I will spare you that experience. But want to say thank y'all. Each and every one of y'all could not do this, would not do this without you guys. Really appreciate it. It's an honor to hang out with you. If you're going to send it, don't bend it. Keep your shiny side up. And we will see y'all on the next one. Y'all have a great rest of your weekend. Start your week off right. We'll see you on Tuesday, I think. Unless I'm in the middle of working on something that I can't get to. Which if I am, fingers crossed, will be pretty cool for me. So anyway, that's a wrap, guys. Thanks again. Adios.